The story of Nico Robin is a tragedy in all aspects of the word. From losing her mom to being abused by her adoptive family, to losing everything in the world precious to her, and to be told to die and being treated as less than human, as well as being hunted by the entire world government for most of her life. However, even through the road of darkness and horror that is her childhood, she reached a pleasant destination, finding a family through the Straw Hats, and eventually reaching happiness. Nico Robin's story is one that doesn't apply to just the story of One Piece. It is a story that can apply to people going through depression, and it demonstrates how at the end of every dark journey, there is light. Hey guys, today we'll be talking about Nico Robin. Before we begin, however, I just want to say sorry for skipping Chopper, but this is something I'm extremely excited to talk about, as she is one of my favorite characters in the show. Robin's story began long before she was first seen in the story. It began with her mother. Keeping in the line with other Straw Hats, Robin's mother left her to go follow her own passion, leaving Robin in the hands of her sister. Here, Robin was forced to do long hours of work and tedious chores by her aunt, while her cousin got to go free and enjoy life. This emotional and sort of physical torture caused her to live a rather depressing life until she found her one true passion, archaeology. Living on the island of Ohara, an island full of scholars, it's not hard to see why she chose archaeology. Living here, she was able to find a family to the greatest archaeologists in the world, the scholars of Ohara. Here, she spent her days researching about the Lost Kingdom and ended up truly finding joy in her time with them. This is common amongst a lot of people living dark lives, finding joy through one thing, and one thing in particular. Eventually, it became a crutch for her and her happiness. Her only true happiness did, after all, come from archaeology. However, this crutch was taken away soon by the cruel, heartless world government during the horror that is the Buster Claw. During this horror, we saw Robin and the other scholars of Ohara being persecuted for their research of the ancient kingdom. This was one of the first times we got to see the extent of the world government's cruelty, as they, in cold blood, killed everyone Robin loved. Robin had to witness her mother, who had just came back for a few days, be murdered, along with the rest of the scholars of Ohara, right in front of her eyes, whom, by the way, were one of the only people she ever smiled with. As her and her newfound friend Jaguar D. Saul ran away, we see another cold, dark moment, as she had to witness her friend Saul be murdered by Aokiji, the Marine Vice Admiral. However, thankfully Aokiji let her live, and so Robin began her life of hell, running away from the world government. We continue on with Robin's story, and we can see her travel from island to island, seeking shelter, while also constantly running away from the world government due to her ability to read the ancient language. Every time she runs, however, we get to see how people try to turn her in for her bounty, and see how she's told to go die. As a child who just witnessed everyone she loved be murdered, this left a mark on her. Similar to the real world, what you tell a child can leave a mark on them for a long time to follow. While constantly being told to die, and also having to see everyone she loved being murdered, after a while, she began the people telling her to go die, and the people telling her she was worthless. She began to see herself as not worthy to live, and began to think of how she could have died in place of the scholars of Ohara, and how she could have died in place of Saul, and how she could have died in place of her mother. Through survivor's guilt and constantly being told she is worthless and scum, she began to adopt those as truth, and saw herself as a human unworthy of living. Yet, she continued to run. She kept running and running in search of a home, longing for someone to take her in. Yet, everywhere she ran, she was surrounded by the world government and cruel responses. And mind you, this was all when she was 10 years old, when her brain was still forming as she was just in adolescence. She was going through hell at such a young age, which is truly horrible. This dark childhood of Robin is one thing that stands out to me most. Her childhood is truly one of the darkest things to ever occur in all of One Piece, an example of how cruel the world government can be, and how horrible humanity can be for money. It also displays just how much actions can affect a child whose brain is still developing. Children tend to believe things around them a lot more than adults, and this is evident with Robin, who began to believe that she's worthless and that she should die. Yet, she keeps going. Things like this are truly inspirational, and I hope people who watch this video understand that no matter how dark your road is, no matter how dark your journey is, you must keep going in the hope of finding that light. Disclaimer, skip ahead until this timestamp if you have not read Berserk, as I will now be simping over Berserk. This could also be why I like Berserk so much, as no matter how dark Guts' story got, he kept going. As the Skull Knight calls him, he's a struggler, similar to Nico Robin. Both of them have had their own journey filled with struggles, yet both of them kept going. This is something that can genuinely impact so many lives, as many people with depression and other mental health issues are also strugglers on this long journey of life. They struggle, yet they still keep going, and it is truly remarkable. And I just want to let you know that if you manage to bear it all and keep going, I'm genuinely so proud of you and love you. Following Nico Robin's horrible childhood, we see her go to Crocodile and join Baroque works. It is during Alabasta Saga that her true ambitions are revealed, her dream of finding out the true history of the world in order to avenge the fallen people of Ohara. It is something that means a lot to her. At this point in the story, it was her motivation to live. During the Alabasta Saga, however, she refused to tell Crocodile the location of the secret weapon, something that genuinely shocked me. I do believe, however, that the reason she did this was to prevent what happened on Ohara to ever happen again. She believed that no one should have that much power in the ancient weapon. During this sequence, we also see how she's willing to die. Whether from the disappointment that the poneglyph didn't tell her what she wanted to, or not, she was ready to give up her life, asking Luffy to let her die. It's clear that she didn't value her life that much, and she still views herself as unworthy to live. The words of others throughout her childhood still affects her deeply, as she still doesn't value her life. This was when one of the greatest things to happen to Robin occurs. She decides to join the Straw Hats, in hopes of learning more about the world through them. Robin's journey with the Straw Hats is one that is truly heartwarming, similar to other Straw Hats. Through the Straw Hats, she finds herself a loving family, something that she hadn't experienced for years, since she knew the scholars of Ohara. A loving family was something that Robin had lacked for most of her life, but she finally found herself one with the crew. Another important thing is Robin's relationship with Luffy. Luffy, to her, is the man who saved her life, and whether Luffy knew it or not, he had a profound effect on her. Luffy's view of the world in general is very childlike, believing that every human should be allowed to live and be free. Something in direct contrast to Robin, who saw herself unworthy of living as a product of the horrors that she had occurred, and the unfortunate result being that she grew up faster than any human should. This direct contrast definitely affected her and her will to live tremendously. In general, the crew affected her will to live greatly, as now she had people to live for and people to turn to. She had people whom she could rely on for the first time in 15 years. Skip forward a bit to the Water Saga. Side note, yes, I know I skipped Skypiea, where she learned a lot about the history of the world and other stuff, but this is primarily focused on her as a character, not her actual story. Also, I know when they skip meet Kuzan, but in summary, she met Kuzan and trauma floods back in, and I would say that's normal because, you know, Kuzan killed, like, everyone. So, moving on! Water 7. It's widely known as one of the best sagas in the entirety of One Piece, and it's definitely one of the most popular. And a major part of this is due to Nico Robin and her character development throughout the saga. We start off the saga in Water 7, a shipbuilding island, where the Straw Hats are trying to fix their ship, the Going Merry. Rest in peace, Mary. Whilst here, however, Robin acts distant and isolated, something that's extremely unusual from her normal, uplifting behavior. After a few chapters, a lot of chapters, we find out that the government agency known as CP9 is present on Water 7. Whilst the others aren't quite sure what that means, Robin, who hasn't been on the run for the government for her entire life, is aware immediately. She then ends up committing an extremely selfless act. She turns herself into the world government to avoid the Straw Hats being hurt by a conflict with the government. This act is extremely selfless, as Robin walks to the same organization who killed everyone she loved. and turned herself in to protect the crew. For those who still don't understand, this organization traumatized Robin to insane amounts, so much so that even the mention of them made her frozen out of fear. She spent most of her life running from the organization, and now she's willingly walking towards certain death for the crew. This clearly shows the bond she has built with the crew, as her entire life she put herself first. During Baratier, for example. Not Baratier. During Alabasta, for example, she betrayed the entire organization to preserve her own life. During her childhood, survival was the only thing that mattered to her. Yet the bond she built up with this crew was enough to overturn the lifetime of conditioning and fear of the world government. Losing Robin led to the Straw Hats joined by Sogeking to get her back from the most heavily guarded government facility, Enies Lobby, a court where Robin would undoubtedly be sentenced to death, which is something she was aware of before turning herself in. By turning herself in, Robin surrenders herself to the fate of death and accepted it, something that shows that entire "I'm not worthy of living" attitude is still present in her. When we arrived at Enies Lobby, we can see an extremely depressed Robin preparing herself for her inevitable death. When in true Straw Hats fashion, and mostly in true Luffy fashion, they come charging through for their friend. They continue their fight until we get one of the most iconic moments in all of anime and manga, and my personal favorite moment in all of One Piece, as I think this is just one of the greatest moments I've ever seen in all of fiction. As the Straw Hats line up together in front of Robin and their goal, we get a scene of all of them present, as Robin yells at them to go back, to be safe, and to not risk themselves for her. She screams for them to turn back, cursing at them and telling them to leave her dead. Yet, Luffy calmly tells Usopp to shoot down the flag of the world government and declare war upon them. This was Luffy declaring war against Robin's enemy, saying anyone who's an enemy of Robin is an enemy of me and my crew. This was Luffy declaring that he'd protect Robin, and most of all, it was someone, for the first time in her life, swearing to fight back against the world government, whom, by the way, is the strongest organization in the entire world. Realizing all of this, in response to Luffy telling Robin to say she wants to live, she screams out, This moment, in my opinion, is the greatest character development we see throughout One Piece. Robin, for the first time in her life, wants to live. She spent years and years wanting to die and loathing her existence, yet now she embraces it, screaming about how she wants to live. She then proceeds to fight back for the first time in her arc, resisting Elephant Sword Dude. This was in contrast to what she did before, as before she was limp and dead on the inside, and, to be fair, she accepted her fate. As the arc continues and she's saved, she finally embraces the crew fully. She's finally free from the shackles that held her down and is happy with the crew, finally embracing her aliveness. This is something that I do think is genuinely beautiful. Seeing someone who struggles with not wanting to be alive, finally embracing being alive, and appreciating it is something that I do think is amazing. Especially for me, it hit close to home, and to still seeing this occur in anime/manga makes it so much better for me, as I do truly feel like it's a gorgeous representation. Especially the fact that it's her friends that help her appreciate living more, and seeing her friends be there for her, something that hits close to home. The last part of Robin's character development actually occurs on Wano, when Sanji asks her to help him fight back Black Maria. This is an important part for her, as before this she was always the one relying on a crew in a take-take relationship. However, now she had someone relying on her, which meant a lot for her. She learned that she's a valuable asset to the crew through this, and that people do genuinely need her help. Overall, guys, Robin is one of the best written characters in all of One Piece, and I can say that with utter and full confidence. Her arc, Enies Lobby, is genuinely one of the greatest arcs I've ever seen, as prior to Enies Lobby, actually, I wasn't sold on Nico Robin. I felt like she just kind of joined the crew. Yet after that, I knew she had to be there, otherwise the crew wasn't right. Her arc is genuinely so beautiful, and I do hope that people from this arc learn to take care of the younger generations and to also protect their brains and not constantly feed them a negative pool of information, as it will end up affecting them greatly. Telling people to die is also something that I hope no one here does, as it is genuinely horrible to do that. Overall, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day.